Now that we have vehicles in our network, we need to tell them where to go. There are a couple of options for routing vehicles through the network: dynamic assignment and static routing. Dynamic assignment is a topic for an advanced vSIM training course. Static routing is the method of choice for the basic training course and is used in most networks. Once vehicles are routed by either dynamic assignment or static routes, you have additional methods for rerouting vehicles over a portion of the network. These include partial routes, dynamic routes, and parking routes. These are all topics for advanced training courses, but they essentially allow you to reroute vehicles based on criteria such as on-street parking, road closure, congestion, etc. A static route consists of three parts: a routing decision point, where vehicles decide which route to take; a routing destination point, where vehicles leave the route; and a path in between the 2 points. Placing the routing destination point will create a route with the shortest path between the routing decision point and routing destination point. If there is no path from the routing decision point to the routing destination point, vSIM will not allow the routing destination point to be placed. Let's create a static route. To create a static route, first select the routing icon on the toolbar. The routing icon is the icon with a squiggle blue line and an arrow. Now, left-click on the southbound link entering the intersection to select the link, and then right-click on the link on the red line near the red number 1 to create a routing decision on the link. We are creating a static route, so select OK. It is possible to name routing decisions, but in general this is not necessary. Now that we have a routing decision, we need to select the destination point. Let's create the left turn first. Left-click on the eastbound link leaving the intersection, and then right-click on the link on the green line near the green number 1 to create the route. Since there is only one path between these 2 points, we do not need to change the route. To create additional routes from the same routing decision, with the routing decision highlighted, we simply left-click on the link to select it, and then right-click to place the destination point. If the routing decision has become unhighlighted, we can reselect it by left-clicking over the routing decision. Let's create the through and right turns. Since our routing decision is still highlighted, left-click on the southbound link leaving the intersection, and then right-click on the green line near the green number 2 to create the through route. Then, left-click on the westbound link leaving the intersection, and right-click on the green line near the green number 3 to create the right turn route. After we have the 3 paths created through the intersection from this direction, we need to define the volume for each turn. Right-click within the network, but not on a link or connector, to open the routing decision dialog box. The window on the left is a list of all static routing decisions in your network. The right top window displays the details of the currently selected routing decision. This window can be hidden by clicking on the minus button on the upper left of the window. To expand the window again, simply click on the plus button. The middle bottom window lists all routes associated with the routing decision or decisions currently highlighted in the left window, and the right bottom window shows the time intervals used by the routing decisions in your network. Selecting one of the tabs on the top will display partial routes, parking routes, dynamic routes, or closures defined in your network. By default, vSIM creates the time intervals for routes to be from 0 to 99,999 simulation seconds. If you need to change the routing percentages during the simulation, you can add new time intervals using the same method as for vehicle inputs. But in general, your routing percentages won't usually change within a simulation unless you are modeling multiple peak hours within the same vSIM file. Routes can also be defined by vehicle class. If you have imported a file into vSim, the import will create separate routes for trucks and cars. But this is usually not necessary unless you have roadway restrictions in your network. If, for example, you have a turn that is permitted for cars but not for trucks, you will need a separate route for trucks for at least this location. Also, if you have turns that have very high truck percentages compared with the rest of the network, you will need to route trucks separately through the network. In our example, we do not have any roadway restrictions and we have 2% trucks throughout our network, so we only need to create routes for all vehicle types. Instead of absolute vehicle flows, vSim uses relative flows to determine the proportions along all route destinations of one routing decision. This characteristic allows that either real flow volumes or percentages can be entered. Internally, vSim adds up all these relative flows and computes the absolute percentage for each flow automatically. We have 3 routes defined, and we want half of the vehicles using this routing decision to go through, 1/4 to turn left, and 1/4 to turn right. This southbound link has 1,000 vehicles entering per hour, so we will define the first route, which is the left turn, as 250 vehicles, the second route, which is the through movement, as 500 vehicles, and the third route, which is the right turn, as 250 vehicles. Alternatively, we could have defined them as 1, 2, 1, 25, 50, 25, or 250, 500, 250 to get the same percentage for each movement. This allows you to keep the same turning percentages without having to modify route volumes when you increase the amount of vehicles in your network. You would not have to adjust the routes, but only the input volumes. Select OK to close the dialog and keep our changes. We have now successfully routed vehicles coming into the network from the north through this intersection. Now we need to create routes for the other entrances. Let's do the east entrance next. First, left-click 3 times on the network, but not on any links or connectors to deselect Routing Decision 1. Alternatively, you can reselect the routing icon on the toolbar. Left-click on the westbound link entering the intersection to select the link, and then right-click on the link on the red line near the red number 2 to create a routing decision on the link. Select OK in the dialog box. Left-click on the southbound link leaving the intersection, and then right-click on the link on the green line near the green number 2 to create the route. Left-click on the westbound link leaving the intersection, and then right-click on the green line near the green number 3 to create the through route. Then, left-click on the northbound link leaving the intersection, and right-click on the green line near the green number 4 to create the right turn route. And now the south entrance. Reselect the routing icon on the toolbar to deselect the Routing Decision 2. Left-click on the northbound link entering the intersection to select the link, and then right-click on the link on the red line near the red number 3 to create a routing decision on the link. Select OK in the dialog box. Left-click on the westbound link leaving the intersection, and then right-click on the link on the green line near the green number 3 to create the route. Left-click on the northbound link leaving the intersection, and then right-click on the green line near the green number 4 to create the through route. Then, left-click on the eastbound link leaving the intersection, and right-click on the green line near the green number 1 to create the right turn route. Now let's define the percent volumes per turn. Right-click within the network but not on a link or connector to open the Routing Decision dialog box. For simplicity, let's keep the same percentage for each turn that we used with the southbound route, half through, 1/4 left, and 1/4 right. The east approach has 2,000 vehicles per hour, so that would be 1,000 through, 500 left, and 500 right. The south approach has 1,500 vehicles per hour, so that would be 750 through, 375 left, and 375 right. After we've entered all of the turning percentages, we select OK to keep the changes and close the dialog box. So far, we have learned how to create routes, but we have not yet talked about where routes should start and end. This is a very important part of creating routes. In general, you want vehicles to be on routes for the entire time that they are in your network. So, for static routes entering the network, you generally want to start the routes as close to the entrance of the network as possible. This allows the maximum amount of time and distance for vehicles to switch lanes in order to get into the correct lanes to follow the routes through the intersection. If you notice that vehicles are unable to switch lanes before reaching the intersection, you may need to increase the length of the entry link and extend the route. To do this, first we need to edit the link. Let's extend the south approach. Use the slider to pan the network. Now select the link icon on the toolbar. Left-click on the link to select it. Left-click and drag the end of the link. Then reselect the route icon on the toolbar. Left-click to select the link. Left-click on the red bar of the link, and holding the button down, drag the bar. The end of routes leaving the network should be placed as close to the exit of the network as possible. The reason for this is simple. Vehicles that are not on routes don't have a destination. Therefore, they are more likely to switch lanes and drive randomly, which can cause more slowdowns, increasing delays and affecting traffic upstream for vehicles leaving the network. For routes that start or end within the network, the placement is even more important, but we will need an example file that has multiple intersections to see why. The network that we are using has been modified since our last section, and 2 more intersections have been added along with the required routes. Let's zoom out to see a bit more of the network. Select the Show Entire Network icon on the toolbar. We now have 3 intersections along a corridor. We'll focus on the 2 smaller intersections on the right. So let's zoom in on that section. Use the zoom icon on the toolbar and draw a box around the 2 intersections. Left-click once to deselect the zoom. Since we need to allow vehicles enough time and distance to switch lanes before an intersection, we need to start routes between intersections just after vehicles leave the previous intersection. Hence, the westbound routes through the T intersection start at the red 4, just after all of the routes from the previous intersection end. And the through route will end just after the T intersection for the same reason. Let's zoom in a bit closer to the location where this route starts. If we look at this route in centerline view, we will see that we have placed all of our previous routes after the end of all of the connectors at the intersection. This is a good standard that will allow us more flexibility for editing routes in the future. Also note that our next route, which starts at the red 4, is after all of the ends of the previous upstream routes. This is extremely important since a vehicle cannot get onto a new route until after it has left its current route. A vehicle cannot be on 2 static routes at the same time. If you had accidentally placed the end of one of your routes after the start of the next, the vehicle would not be able to get on the route and would randomly select turns, taking the first connector approached in its current lane until it crossed another routing decision or left the network. If you have accidentally done this, you will need to move the end of the route. This is done in a similar way to the routing decision, except that to select the end of the route, you must first select the routing decision associated with it or the route itself from the routing dialog box. Once the route is selected, you simply left-click on the green bar and drag it. As with all network elements, you can delete a route or routing decision by dragging it off of the link. If intersections are closely spaced or if the network is congested, you may need to combine routes, such that vehicles have routes through multiple intersections. vSIM can combine routes for you, but it does have a few restrictions. The routes to combine must have the destination point of the previous route and the next routing decision on the same link or connector. Also, only routes that have the same vehicle classes and time intervals defined can be combined. Since we use the same vehicle class for all of our routes, and we also had routes ending and starting on the same link, we can combine routes in our network. Let's combine routes in our network such that vehicles traveling eastbound are routed through the T intersection. Reselect the route icon on the toolbar, and then left-click twice over routing decision number 5, near the red number 5, once to select the link, and the second time to select the routing decision. On the menu bar, select Edit Combine Routes. vSIM will highlight the routes that will be combined. Select Yes to combine the routes. If we now open the Route dialog box, we can see that routing decision number 5 no longer exists, and routes 6 and 11 now extend through the T intersection and end after the next intersection. The route percentages are automatically adjusted. Route 6 originally had 100 vehicles turning right, and it still does now, but now the 100 vehicles are split into 3 routes that travel through the next intersection. The percentages used for the split are based on the split that was defined for Routing Decision 5's routes. If there are multiple paths between the routing decision and end point of the route, you can select which path to take. To see this, let's zoom in so we can see the 2 intersections on the right. Select Routing Decision number 6 from the Route dialog box, and select Route number 3 for this routing decision. Then select OK to close the dialog box. With the route highlighted in yellow, if you right-click on the route, you can place an intermediate point. If you then click on the intermediate point, you can drag the intermediate point and the route onto another path. Let's move this route so that it takes the more indirect path through the parking lots. Left-click on the new point and drag the point down until the link through the parking lot is highlighted, and then let go of the mouse button. The route has now been moved onto the alternate path. If you need to move only a portion of the route, you can place multiple intermediate points on the route. This route will only move the section of the route between the 2 adjacent intermediate points, which act as pins, pinning the route on the outside of these points. The Routing dialog box has several features that make it easier to edit existing routes, to update old files, or modify files for a new scenario. These are not usually used for new networks, but we'll discuss a few of these anyway. Right-click on the network to open the Routing dialog box. In both the Routing Decision window and the Route window, you can select one or multiple lines and then copy the information to the clipboard to be pasted into Excel or other programs by simply left-clicking and selecting Copy. If you select only from one column, you also have the ability to paste, so you can very easily edit multiple routes' volumes at the same time, reverting to 0 or 1 in preparation for converting a copy of an AM scenario file to a PM scenario as one example, or simply copying the volumes from Excel directly into vSIM if you have this information in that format. If you only need to edit routes that use a certain link in your network, you can select all of your routing decisions and then check the Show Only Routes Over link and select that link. This will filter the routes in the middle bottom window to only show routes that use that link. All of the columns can be sorted by simply clicking on the column header. Clicking twice will sort them in the reverse order. Column headers that contain a funnel can be additionally filtered by any of the options that are used in your network. Clicking on the funnel will bring up a drop-down list box for selection. The column widths are also editable by simply dragging the bar in between the columns. Now that we have vehicles routed through our network, let's start the simulation. Press the play button. Press the stop button to stop the simulation.